killing bush. I've got him at gunpoint.
We're pulling them out.
911. Advise ready for camp.
Welcome to another episode of War Stories. I'm Tom.
I'm Chuck.
And Chuck, we are lucky enough to get someone back. We talked about having him back on. We loved his stories the first time. And very rarely do the stars align for us to get somebody back on so fast. That's as interesting as our guest, but you managed to get him back. So who are we with this week?
We have Glenn, the Florida police officer who knows Johnny Depp.
Yeah, right.
Has multiple books.
That's right. Author, former reality TV star
on Cops.
On Cops, and acquaintance of Mr. Johnny Depp. Now, I looked up, like I said, I looked up a picture, and I saw the picture of Johnny Depp in the era that you knew him. And other than a few wrinkles and a few more tattoos, he has not changed very much at all.
Not really, no. He's just gotten a lot more richer.
Yeah, he's got a picture in his attic that ages, and him and Dick Clark have the same, or Dick Clark had before he finally died. But that dude looked young forever.
Yeah, he did.
So anyway, welcome back, Glenn. How are you?
Well, thank you. I've been pretty good. How are you guys?
Oh, we've been great. We've had some scheduling ups and downs with some of our co-hosts and being in and out of I guess the state in some cases and the hospital in other cases.
Oh.
So it's all been good though, and we're all just grateful for every day we spend above ground, right?
That's it.
Yeah, especially in this day and age, man. I talked to somebody recently, a friend of mine, and he's back still in Southern California, and was talking about the COVID resurgence, and I'm like, what resurgence? Like really? Like people are that's still a thing?
Well, look, the president has it again, right?
Right, and according to him, he has cancer too.
Well, yeah, no, I think it's just to push that the new COVID drug. There's this new COVID,
the oral medication
to help fix the disease. I didn't know this was a disease now, but it's Plavix or some COVID Vix or Plavix or I don't know what the fucking thing is. But I'm like, I look over at my wife. I'm like, that's weird. She goes, yeah, that's really weird. I'm like, I wonder if someone owns stock in that. She's like, it seems like they're pushing something. And I was like, sounds like it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I wonder who that might be.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's a locker room conversation right there for sure. Well, Glenn, why don't you, for our listeners that maybe didn't hear your first episode, kind of remind everybody of your background and your law enforcement career highs and lows, and then we'll jump into some of your Cocaine Cowboy era stories that are just super fascinating to me.
All right. Well, I'm an ex-sergeant from the military police. I was stationed in Germany for about 5 years. A short time after that, I joined a small department in the city called the City of Dania Police Department. I was there in South Florida. About several years later, they were annexed by the Sheriff's Office of Broward County. And I got promoted to sergeant short time after that. And after 25 years with them, I retired.
So it was 25 years total, or just with Broward County?
25 years total in policing, in civilian policing.
Right. And that's not including the military time, obviously.
Right.
So, and Broward County, as we discussed, the era that you were there was famous for the era of Cocaine Cowboys. Cigarette boats and big drug cases and but you guys and you were still in the era where mobsters were going to Florida to die,
and they still are
they real? Is it still a big popular place for mobsters to retire to?
Oh yeah, sure, because it's a homestead state, so the feds they can't take your homes, so they still live in these gigantic mansions on the water. And every once in a while, you hear one of these old names pop up that they saw them in a restaurant or something like that.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
They couldn't take their homes.
No.
Not under the asset forfeiture laws at all?
No, not on the, because Florida's a homestead state. So they can't take your home. You can take everything else.
Right. That's crazy. Well, I think it's super fascinating to think of, like, because it happens, you know, the Nazis went to South America, the mobsters go to Florida. So
the weather.
Right, you know. It's funny how those kinds of things, I guess the migration patterns of the criminal mind in some ways.
They made a TV show about that.
Right?
Criminal Minds.
That would actually, I think I was thinking of that movie My Blue Heaven, where Steve Martin plays a mobster that goes into the witness protection program and has to live in the suburbs.
Oh,
and I always think of it because they filmed it in the city where I was a police officer before I obviously came on the job. I'm not that old, but I always think about, you know, like, can you imagine? And this is from a guy, I swear to you, Chuck knows what I'm talking about. My next door neighbor, my last house in Southern California before I moved, I swear to you, my next door neighbor was somehow loosely affiliated with the Mexican cartel. And
nice.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah. So I just always think of how you never quite know who you're living next door to.
No, you don't.
So, especially in Broward County, apparently. So let's just jump right into it, I think, because this is going to be super fun. We can start swapping stories right away. But I want to get back to a little bit of your time on Cobb's, because we covered that as far as how the nuts and bolts of it worked. But you were early on in the show, first or second season, if I remember.
It's the first season, the first few episodes.
Yeah. And that was it. Did you ever do any more than that?
No, they moved on to, you know, other cities around the county, and then he went to out of state.
Okay. And what have you ever been recognized at all from, like, people that you've arrested? They're like, hey, you're the guy from Cops.
Well, not people that I've arrested, but my wife and I, just how we go out to dinner or something, and somebody would walk up and go, hey, listen, I think, were you on Cops last night? I go, yeah, why? Hey, can we get your autograph? My autograph.
That's funny.
I'm talking about my autograph.
Yeah, I'll
a few times.
Was it
if you speed, I'll give you a citation with my autograph on it.
That's true. The only person that really noticed me was the president when he was walking into the hotel that time.
I don't think did you tell us the story of meeting the president?
Yeah, I think so. When I was working in the city, and it was the President Bush, the elder, and his wife were doing something, and the Secret Service, I was working with the Secret Service.
Oh, that's yes.
Mm-hmm. And the agent walked by and said, hey, I think I saw you on Cops last night.
Yes, yeah.
Then the president says the same thing as he walks by.
That's cool. Now, was your guys' I used to watch reruns of Cops all the time with my dad and stuff like that, growing up as a kid and then as a young adult. And in Florida, they did a lot of Cops in Florida. Was your guys' agency the ones that you guys didn't wear the white back in the day, the white shirts, right?
No, we did. White shirt, green pants.
Was that your guys' agency or your guys' department that started it off by doing the inspection in front of cops? Was that your guys' department?
What was in Florida? Inspection?
Huh?
Like a uniform inspection.
That's how they started off the episode, was like a fucking inspection of the coppers, and then they went out on patrol, and I was like, huh.
There's probably some. I don't remember them doing that with us, but I'm sure they have. But yeah, we wore the white shirt, blue and green pants. Now they're not. Now we're all green now.
Yeah, because I was like, I watched Broward, the women of Broward County. Like there was all about the female police officers, which I was like, dang, they're getting into some shit. But I was just like, I was confused because I was like, wait, wasn't that Broward that was doing the white shirts and they had their inspection on camera? And I was like, that's wild.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, they probably did it. Yep, those to embarrass everybody. It's okay.
Right. Well, I remember seeing white shirts on police officers and just thinking it was so weird. You know, I mean, growing
we always
up,
thought it was a bad idea.
Well,
What happens
makes
when
you
you
a
get butter
giant
ketchup
target,
on it?
right?
Yeah. They didn't work very well at night.
No, and they didn't give you a night uniform or anything.
You wore your jacket.
Yeah,
That was
I
it.
think there was an agency in Southern California that tried polo shirts and blazers at one point.
What?
Yeah.
Polish and blazers?
Yeah, they tried polo
The bow
shirts as
tie.
like a class B, and then a tie with a blazer, and instead of a badge, it had like a crest on the pocket and stuff.
What?
That's yeah. Oh yeah.
That's like probation status.
Yeah, it was. They probably looked more like hotel security than a police department, but they were like. I mean, that would be like the department issuing you a Camry. You know, like here's your Toyota Camry.
I mean, I've seen some wild issues.
What's that?
As long as the car had air conditioning and a radio, I was happy.
Right. I went to a police academy. One of the guys in my academy class, he was a lateral from another state. And I can probably say comfortably that other than, going to Europe and finding out, this is probably the weirdest domestic law enforcement agency police car I've ever heard of. He worked for Aspen PD, and they drove Saabs.
Oh, wow.
Oh, geez.
Mm-hmm. Saabs. That was that was not the answer I expected. He's like, yeah, we used to drive Saabs. They were the turbos. They were fast. We loved them. You had to drive Saab.
Yeah, the sheriff and Nick Navarro, when I first started, the Saab, they wanted to use the Saab car, and they brought that in to test it out. And if you were over like 5'2", it was too late. You couldn't fit in the thing. And I'm 6'5". There's no way I could fit in that little car.
CHP
never got them.
CHP had a 5.0 Mustang Fox body.
Yep, they did. It was their like high speed vehicle.
Dude, I used to run in it with my dad because he's like, I got to run this motherfucker out because it's old and it smells like gas. And he'd like hop in and he would just drive me around in it. I'm like, this thing stinks. Yeah. It was quick though. It was quick.
I remember those CHP Mustangs. They'd catch up to you. When my dad's era, they had pursuit vehicles, and there were these big. I think he said they were the Plymouth Torino or something like that. Just a big V8 muscle car, and they, if you needed a pursuit, somebody'd go grab the muscle car and haul ass. I'm like, man, those were the days of the Plymouth Belvedere and stuff like that. Those cars were probably fast enough as it is, but.
Well, now they're issuing the Chargers, and they got the SUVs now, and they're still using the Crown Vics.
Yeah. I wouldn't hate on a Charger other than the fact that there's no room in them. But
they're fucking garbage. Right. They're so garbage.
Exactly.
I would, there's more room in the SUVs. However, I still have a soft spot in my heart for the good old Crown Victoria. Even the Chevy Caprice.
That's what I drove.
They need to remake the Crown Vic so bad because all these other imitation cars suck. The best one, in my opinion, is the version of the SUV, which is on a Ford Taurus show chassis, and all major municipality law enforcement agencies have them. But CHP, because I can only speak for California, CHP has those things decked out and they sound wild when they take off. I'm like, ours don't sound like that, because I've been right next to him talking. They're like, hold on, we got to go. And I'm like, just watch them take off. They're going to sound completely different, because ours are like these little V6 pieces of shit, and theirs was like all souped up, like turboed out and everything, like really, really, really fast, or like supercharged, or I don't know what the fuck they did under it. But that thing, when it took off, it screamed. I was like, whoa, good.
Yeah.
Well, they like to chase.
Oh yeah, they can chase everything.
Yeah, right.
And down here, they're not allowed to chase anything.
Well, that's the way the whole thing's going, isn't
nationwide. It? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Unless it's a violent felon, you can't chase them.
Yeah.
Unless it's a violent felon?
Yeah, unless it's a violent felony, you can't chase them.
Wow.
How do you know it's not a violent felon?
Well, if it's a stolen car, you got to wave goodbye to them.
Wow, jeez.
Yeah.
Can't go after them.
Now, Broward County had some pretty high-profile cases in its day, though, didn't it?
Well, it had a lot of big profiling cases, sure.
Yeah, so like you guys, you guys in a lot of ways, like Miami-Dade, Broward County, there was there was that it was like a hub for drug trafficking, right? So, what kind of cases were you guys? Because I know you worked like a organized crime, major case type unit, and
the drug smuggling cases through the airport and the train station.
Right. Now, you told us about some of those last time, and what was typically going on? Like how was at the time? Was it a lot of mules, or were you seeing a lot of like actual aircraft that were where the aircraft itself was loaded down with bales and stuff like that, or was it human? You smuggled on, humans like mules, or was it were they trying to surreptitiously smuggle it in coffee grounds, or what were you guys seeing a lot of back then?
Well, it was really mainly the mules coming through carrying either on their body or in their suitcase. One time we did get a bunch of kilos out of an airplane, out of the belly of the airplane. That's when we seized the airplane. He got in trouble for it.
Right.
But it was mostly people carrying it on their body or in computer parts, which was one of our bigger cases. Turned out to be a pretty good DEA case later on.
Tell us about that. I mean, how were they smuggling in the computer parts, and how did you catch them?
Well, it was Christmas time, and I was in plain clothes doing my thing. I was on the other side of the X-ray scanner, where it becomes a secure area. And I'm standing with a uniformed deputy, and we're just kind of watching things going through the X-ray machine. So this guy puts on a computer tower, the one that sits on the floor.
Sure.
And when he goes through the X-ray, I'm looking at it and I go, "Wait a minute, something looks weird here. There's no guts, no wiring, no fans. It's just 4 blocks inside it."
And he thought that would work.
So when he came on, the other side, we asked the guy, "Is this yours?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Okay, we're going to open it up." And it was 4 kilos of cocaine in it.
How does he think that's going to work?
Who knows? They're not smart guys.
Yeah, true. Sometimes I wonder if those guys are the decoys.
And we arrested him. And he rolled over on this next guy. So we did some substantial assistance on him. Where if he can tell us who the next guy is, maybe the state attorney will lower his charges. Because right now he was charged with, trafficking in cocaine over 250 grams, which carries a 25 years in jail and a $250,000 fine. Right?
Wow.
So he rolled over on the guy that he was delivering it to, which was a guy in New York. So we locked him up for the night. We got with DEA, and DEA goes, "Okay, we'll pick up the case." So the next day we got tickets to go to New York with the bad guy and the dope. And we got an early flight. And we landed in LaGuardia. I think it was LaGuardia. And the guy makes the phone call. "Hey, I'm here at the airport." So the other bad guy's going to meet us. So it was myself, my partner, the DEA guy, and a couple of customs guys from New York. And we're kind of set up around this guy. And I'm laying down on the ground. My head was on my little overnight bag I brought. And the bad guy walks in and kind of steps over me and goes and sits down next to our bad guy that we brought in. And he makes the delivery, and we swoop in on that guy and grab him. So now the DEA and us, we take the guy, and he rolls over on his guys, which turns out to be a coke lab across from one of the colleges in New York. I think it was St. John's University. So we go over to this house, and of course, unfortunately, there's nobody home. So we figured, we'll sit here for a little while. So we looked inside, and he had this big crate. And in the crate was much more kilos, more cutting agents, the scales, all the lab equipment to make all this stuff up. So we waited for hours, and nobody ever showed up. So DEA said, "Oh, we'll take it from here. We'll leave, and we'll take it from here." But in the meantime, I had the guy take a Polaroid picture of me and my partner holding up our badges and pointing our guns at the camera. And he took a picture of us doing that, and we put it inside the crate. So when the guy opened it up, he would see that somebody was there that shouldn't be there. We don't know what happened, but we had to leave. So it's just kind of leaving a little calling card.
Did you guys ever get to write? Oh, when did it end up happening with it?
But that case, after the DEA took it over, we were out of it at that point.
No, I understand, but you said it turned into. Oh, you didn't find out later what happened.
Yeah, we didn't find out later what happened. I'm sure they made the arrest
DEA.
on it, Yeah. But it was kind of ironic is that the guy that we arrested got out on bail while he was waiting trial, and he left the country. And about 10 years later, he's coming back into the country, going through customs, and there's a federal warrant for his arrest for skipping out on his bond. The DEA calls me up and goes, listen, we got this guy back in custody. Do you remember you made this arrest? I go, yeah. He goes, well, we need you in New York for the trial. I go, okay, no big deal. So they sent me a ticket, and they met me at the airport in New York, took me to a nice dinner, put me up in a really beautiful hotel. They picked me up the next morning. We had breakfast. We go to their office first to do something, then to the courthouse. And I'm sitting in the courthouse outside the courtroom. And I'm sitting. Now it's lunchtime. They break for lunch. We go to lunch. We come back. I sit again with this customs agent. And the DEA guy comes out and goes, okay, you're not needed. The judge doesn't need you. So I never testified for anything.
Thanks for the
I
trip,
spent the rest of the day there. And I went home the next day.
Man, I mean, at least you got a free trip out of it. I hate like losing a day off just to drive an hour in a suit to sit there in front of a courtroom for 4 hours only to have them say, yeah, you're not needed. You can go. He's pleading. I'm like, you fucking knew he was going to plea hours ago, didn't you? You needed me here just in case, and you wrecked my day off because of it.
Right. But I got paid for it, so I wasn't.
Well, you got a flight to New York. You got a little mini vacation out of it. That's probably pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
And it was all overtime.
Right?
No.
Oh, I would have made it a work day. I'm like, no, I'm going to take this on a work day. Did you guys? So I looked up some famous cases back in the day in Florida and stuff. Did you guys ever deal with the Haitian drug lord Jacques Catant?
I didn't. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because there was a lot of like, it wasn't just Colombians. It was, I mean, you guys had Haiti's right there, Cuba's right. Like it comes from all over the place for you guys, right? I mean, you're dealing with just about, you got Caribbean crime gangs. You've got like Haiti and I don't know. Did you get a lot of Jamaicans? You always hear about like some of those island countries with voodoo or with some of their other crazy like you go to a drug.
The sheriff had a Jamaican task force because they were getting a little bit out of control. So they had their own special guys working that group. I didn't do that. But
what kinds of things are you seeing?
It was also domestically too, because it was also domestic because the outlaw motorcycle gang, who had a big gang group in the city, they were into dealing a lot of drugs. And,
as motorcycle
and the gang unit. Yeah. And, what was ironic is, though, that they did their crime stuff, but they never bothered the cops. If there was ever any police interaction with those guys, they were very cool, calm, and collected. And I even had one guy help me out in a fight once when I was a rookie cop. I dragged this guy out of a bar, and I'm rolling around with this guy on the street. And then all of a sudden, this big guy comes from behind me, grabs him, throws him around, and helps me get him handcuffed. And it was an outlaw motorcycle guy.
Oh, jeez.
So I said, hey, thanks, man. I appreciate your help.
Right? I mean, I guess, any port in a storm, really. I mean,
Sure.
But see, there's for, you talk about an escalation. You look at over the years and you look at the way the code, quote unquote, code used to be. There was kind of an ethic, a street code between law enforcement and the criminal element, and like organized crime had their code, old school street gangs had their code, and you didn't violate it. And part of that was, obviously you don't rat on your friends, snitches get stitches, but also part of that was, a certain line with the cops where each organization had their own kind of line of how you would deal with law enforcement. But then you get into obviously what you're talking about, the Jamaicans, where you get into MS-13, or you get into 18th Street, you get into some of these more virulent organizations where they decide, screw it, we're going to take it a step up. I remember the first time my dad told me what a Colombian necktie was. And, if maybe Glenn, you could explain that for the listener who doesn't maybe know what a Colombian necktie is. It might be an antiquated term. I don't even know if they say it anymore.
I don't know. It's by cutting out your tongue and
slashing your throat open. They slash.
Stick the tongue out.
Stick your tongue out of the hole in your throat.
Yeah, out of your throat. Yeah. I was threatened with one.
Yeah.
Really? So it's still
on the job.
It's still.
I couldn't testify in court because of it.
Really?
Legit threat. Yeah, from a Hell's Angel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because I arrested him.
I can imagine.
Well, what kinds of things? I mean, for the Jamaicans to get their own task force, that must have been pretty escalated, level of violence and level of kind of criminal activity.
Yeah, they were into a lot of shootings. Yeah, they were doing a lot of shootings in the county, in the Jamaican section of the county, and so I think that's what sparked the sheriff into having a specialized unit work on them.
And was it effective? Did they really? Like a lot of times when you stand up a task force, you do it for show, but sometimes they're very effective and they knock down.
Yeah, they were
that
effective.
element.
They pretty much shut them down. So they put most of the bad guys away, and then the other was kind of just faded away after a while.
Now, of course, you think Jamaica, you think weed. Were they bulk marijuana traffickers, or were they into all kinds of stuff?
From what I remember, they were more into the marijuana trade and guns.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, if they're shooting gang, that would make sense that they'd be into guns, right? They were. So in your career, you've seen. I mean, you are also a hostage negotiator, right? And we talked about that last time, which you confirmed that the negotiator is. As I like the movie, and you confirmed that it's a decently made movie as far as negotiating stuff goes.
Yes.
But as far as your tactical experiences and stuff like that go, were you strictly dealing with the hostage negotiator stuff, or were there other instances where you had to get hands-on tactically with the team?
You mean during a negotiation?
Yeah. No, and maybe during a negotiation or because you always see that the hostage, I'll go in, or you see that some of those kind of things. Was there ever a time where you had to get, I figured that was all, Hollywood BS, but are there times when you're involved in the tactical team, either as a negotiator or just a tactical team member, where they're like, nope, we need you for something else, or you have a different job entirely here now, or how does that dynamic work?
Well, yeah, if it's a hostage call out, it's a SWAT call. The negotiators go on all the calls.
Right.
And it really depends on what you're dealing with. I mean, I have to talk to people from jumping off overpasses or on top of a hotel, and I'm hands-on with them. I'm not doing it from a distance. Eventually we get them off and grab onto them and put them on the ground. But other than that, it would be just negotiating to the point where somebody can come out, and then the SWAT guys would handle them. Right.
I think of famous incidents. You've got the guy who had the gun shot out of his hand by a sniper. I
remember that.
You've got the guy who was in negotiations with SWAT, and he had the bombs around his neck. It was the pizza delivery robbery or whatever it was. Or now there's this. In fact, we just talked about it on Locker Room, but we're doing research to kind of talk about it on one of our episodes. Is this one in? I think it was Minneapolis. We were just talking about where the guy's in negotiations for 6.5 hours, and then snipers end up taking him out. And what's that dynamic like? Are you aware of everything as the negotiator, or are you compartmentalized where you're just focused on your thing, and if there's other plans going on, you may not be aware of it?
Well, that's partly true. We would be we're totally separate from what the SWAT guys were doing, because we don't want to give away any information by accident, what they might be doing tactically.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing we would really be involved with is the SWAT commander telling us, like, to keep them talking, or so we're going to make a dynamic entry into the house, or do something else. But they don't tell us their tactics. They don't want to accidentally blow it.
So you'd be given a heads up if they were going to be like doing something, so you wouldn't be caught off guard, or whether you just be caught off guard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not talking to the guy, and then the sniper just takes him out mid sentence.
Like, that's cool.
Wait, I'm not talking to you. Don't do that.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So that kind of that brought you into sharing your stories and telling these stories. That kind of brought you into a world where you decided to write, and you became an author. And
yes.
And how many books have you published at this point? 4. Now, what kind of books are they?
They're nonfiction. One is a true crime drama I was involved with back in the 80s, and then the other ones are different.
And so, tell us about your true crime book. Was that your first one?
Yeah, the first one is called The Hurt. It's a true story about when I was working in the rock and roll club. The club is called the Agora Ballroom.
Right, that's the one you told us about last time with Johnny Depp, right? Right.
It was a pretty famous club. We had thrown some people out of the club and some girls, and they wound up getting hurt. And then they tell their boyfriends that they got beat up, which wasn't true. And then the boyfriend said, I was going to come back here and kill everybody or shoot up the place. So later on in the night, the guy comes by with a friend that does a drive-by shooting.
Oh, yes, I remember. Okay, so you wrote a book about that incident.
Right.
Okay, so go ahead.
First we wrote it up as a movie script, and then I got it transformed into a book.
Right.
So the guys do the shooting. One of the bouncers winds up getting killed. I run over to him. I grab onto him. I put my finger in the bullet hole in his back, trying to stop the bleeding. It didn't work. Finally, medics and police come. They take him to the hospital. He dies on the way to the hospital. On the way out, the guys get into a crash down the street. The police respond to the accident, not knowing these guys were just involved in a murder. They do the accident report and they leave. And then eventually they get rid of the car and the gun and they flee the state.
Right.
And about a short time later, they're extradited back to the state for trials. And one guy took 3 trials to get him convicted because the first 2 were hung juries. Then the next guy was convicted on the first one on first-degree murder. They both get sent up to North Florida to Stark, where the prison is. And about 7 years later, one of the guys gets raped in prison, and he contracts AIDS. And the family pleads with the governor for a pardon, which he gives them so he can go home and die. The other guy escapes prison about a year later in a laundry truck and is on the run for about 10 years until he's recaptured and brought back to prison. And then the book follows all the antics back in the club, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll that was going on in the club. And that was the first book.
And now your other books are not true crime?
No, the other ones are made up. The other one is a one that's 25 years later. It's called The Hurt. The real story behind The Hurt and the rise and fall of extremists. And that one takes place 25 years after the club closed. The same owner that closed it reopened it, but not knowing that he's a member of Antifa.
Oh, and now that's fictionalized.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. So you wrote a fictionalized story and novel based on, you took a real life event and then what if'd it 25 years later.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Has there been any traction on the first book you wrote? Because you originally wrote it as a script and then they said like, oh, hey, write it as a book and maybe it'll become a movie. Has there been any traction on that ever coming onto the screen?
No, not really. It's extremely hard unless you know somebody, and I kind of know somebody, but it doesn't do any good. But actually, just yesterday, I did send out the script to some lady in California that she goes, this looks really interesting. Let me look into this. So I said, listen, if you could just take it, I'll just give the script to you. You can develop it, rewrite it. Just give me a small percentage if it goes to the screen, if it goes anywhere.
Right.
And she goes, okay.
Let her option it kind of thing.
Yeah, option it out and see what happens. And I said, I sent her a copy of the book also. I said, read the book. Let me know what you think. So far, I've had a lot of good reviews on the book. we'll see what happens.
Might as well, right? Now, how did you decide to go from being? I'm assuming you did all this post retirement, or did you actually do some of this while you were still working?
No, it was a post retirement.
Okay, and how did you decide after you retired you were going to write a true crime book?
Well, it took many, many years later. I actually met this girl who happened to be a waitress in the club at the time, but she was working in the clerk's office. And I was there on a court case. And she goes, hey, Glenn, how you been? I haven't seen you in a long time. Did you ever write anything about the shooting? I go, I'm thinking about it. And it's many years later, I was thinking about it. And I go, all right, I did it. Mm-hmm. Right. And I just did it. It was easy to write because I was there. Right.
Sure. Now, did those events influence any of your decisions when you were working the street or because that was not in the performance of your duties as a deputy sheriff for Broward County. No. That was separate. You were, you told us you were working a side gig. And do those events have a way of influencing, or what you saw have a way of kind of coloring your views when you're working the street, or did it kind of not? It was kind of separate.
I think it was separate. Okay, it was just two totally different things. Just that that was before law enforcement, so it kind of taught me how to deal with people. When they're not in the right state of mind, or they want to fight, or they want to make threats. Because later on, I had to deal with that in law enforcement, and I had to.
Did it change your mind at all regarding traffic accidents?
Right. That's what we talked about last time. Is you never know. Like, right, this guy had a crash, and the cops were completely unaware of what he had just done.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's not really with the accidents. You show up on the scene of an accident, you handle it. And if something looks out of place, you start asking questions about it. But most of the time, it's just an accident.
Because this was something I just discussed with a guy I'm getting to know who's a retired law enforcement as well. And one of the things we were discussing is how certain events that you go through, whether it's an officer-involved shooting or being present when an officer is shot and killed, or having someone you're close to get, gravely injured or even killed in the line of duty, it changes your perspective, and it alters how you view the job, for the rest of your career. And not always, I wouldn't say not always for the better, if it makes you a sharper police officer, if it makes you a better investigator, if it makes you a safer cop, then that's good. But sometimes the downside of that is, everything's got every good has a bad side, I guess. And some of that is you take it home. It changes your personal life as well. Did you experience any of that kind of stuff, or did you have any events that kind of, other than this one was not work related, but did you have any of those kinds of events while you were working where it just kind of was a big enough influence that it changed your views on how you were a cop?
Well, I always reflect back when one of my guys on my shift was killed in the line of duty. He was hit by a car on a traffic stop. And I go, well, maybe you learn from your mistakes. Maybe he shouldn't have been standing on the traffic side of the car.
Right.
Maybe he should have been standing on the other side where there's no traffic coming by. But things have been different. Who knows? But and actually after that incident, when I made a traffic stop, I didn't approach on the driver's side. I always approached on the passenger side. So I wouldn't be hit by a car. Now, is it a guarantee? No.
No, right. And that's a big debate. And I think, because I've heard cops always approach on the passenger side. And then the other guys, no, always approach on the driver's side. And my philosophy on it was always make a determination once you stop the car what the safest, most effective, and best tactical advantage for that individual traffic stop is.
Yeah. Every incident is different.
Yeah, and it makes a big difference whether or not you're working, a municipal city, or if you're working a highway or whatnot, because like, look at CHP. And I go to CHP a lot because I have a lot of experience with CHP because my dad and stuff like that. But he was always saying, you never cross in between your bumper and your front bumper and their rear bumper. You always come back and double around your backside of your vehicle, come along the passenger side away from the traffic, and approach their car on the passenger side. So you stay away from traffic and you don't get hit by a drunk driver, because they had many officers get hit by, squished in between two vehicles, a police vehicle and the person's vehicle from a drunk driver because of the lights and stuff like that. But then you go and work, in a municipal city like I did, and you approach on the driver's side, and unless it's not advantageous to do so. And then you have to make a determination. Okay, well, now I'm going to go into the passenger side. But many times you're working with partners and you guys both approach. And so it's different dynamics and different training in different agencies and in different locations. So it's like, and I think back to what Tom just said, make a determination what the safest route is going to be and the most tactically sound one, and then do that and have that in your mind. Have a couple different ways it can go. That way, when you get out, you're not stuttering, you're not figuring your stuff out on the fly. You kind of already have made up your mind which is the safest route. But honestly, in this job, anything's dangerous, and traffic stops are the most dangerous things you can do in law enforcement.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I feel going to say they're routine traffic stops. Nothing routine about them.
Yeah, it should be called. I'm going to do a shirt that's the Schrodinger's traffic stop. The guy in the car is both a violent felon and not a violent felon simultaneously. Schrodinger's cat. The cat either is or isn't dead, but you don't know until you open the box. So until you open the box, you have to assume, or at that point, the cat exists in both states, because your mind has to believe that it can be either or. Well, it's the same thing with traffic stops. As you approach that car, the person in the car both is and isn't a violent felon who's ready to kill you at any second, because you don't know. And even then, when you say, hi, hello, how are you? My name's so-and-so here. Do you know why I stopped you? They might appear completely code 4, completely compliant. And then just the next second they turn on you and,
Yeah.
And, you were talking about walking between cars earlier. We had a guy on my shift when I first started with the police department doing a big drug sting in the city. And this guy was just brand new. He was a rookie cop. He came from California. He was the stand-in double for Lou Ferrigno in The Hulk.
Wow.
He was a big guy, right? And we're doing his drug sting, and he's standing between the bad guy's car and the police car. And the guy floored it backwards and caught him and severed his leg.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
And that's a big reason right there. Well, okay. So start with, make them put the car in park and turn it off, don't ever let them leave the car running.
Right.
Don't cross between the two cars, take their keys. I was always taught, not just that you can get smashed between the two cars, but that the lights from your police car silhouette you and give away your position. Sure. If you cross behind your police car, you have the wall of light. It's tactical lighting. They don't know where you are at any given moment, unless you're wearing a bright white Broward County 1980s uniform shirt, in which case you're practically glow in the dark.
Exactly.
On that topic of silhouetting and big targets that give you away, there has been a constant debate in municipal policing, and it is when you're driving down a street. Most agencies teach you, hey, we're going to black out completely. We even have switches in our car that turns off our brake lights, so no one can see our brake lights when we hit the brake lights. And then there's debate with that. Well, why wouldn't you just turn on your floodlights and all your bright floodlights to come out and and turn your high beams on, because then no one can see. You're blinding everybody. And, or just turn your high beams on, because now you're blinding everyone. No one can tell if it's a cop, because when you're driving down the city streets, there are overhead lighting, there's ambient lighting around, and you can clearly tell of a black and white with a light bar on top. Unless you're a slick top, you can see that light bar and it's giving you away. And now people can see you coming up and have a chance to set up on an ambush or whatever. So there's this debate going, do you black out? When do you black out? When do you turn your high beams on? And I was always like, no. You never turn your high beams. You always black out. You hit the blackout switch and you just creep and you try to catch people slipping. Well, that might work. However, if they're waiting or they have a lookout, And they look and they're like, that's a police car because I can see lights on top,
Yep.
So it's like this big debate. And I tried it a few times where I was going to try to sneak up on people, which would work better. Let me turn my high beams on and let me black out. And I caught a lot of people with high beams.
Oh yeah.
Really? Well, I've done both, but let me tell you something that might make you laugh, Chuck, or maybe it won't surprise you at all. Our agency disabled all the blackout buttons.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
You know why? Because the highway patrol told them that blackout buttons on the car were illegal, and there was no exemption in the vehicle code for a police car to be allowed to black out.
Oh, come on.
What? That's ridiculous.
It's true.
He does some wild shit, dude. They're crazy.
So our agency capitulated, and they were like, yes, there is no exception in the vehicle code. And so for liability purposes, like, yeah, if we black out and somebody hits us because we didn't have any lights on the car, it's our fault.
Oh, great.
So they removed the blackout. The button was still there. It just was non-functional. And so we still, we would still creep, drop down to like our fog lights and try to creep. But I think it all depends. If you're on a busy city street and they've got those orange, sodium vapor lamps that you're not blacking out and doing, anything incognito under that, then yeah, absolutely. Use go the opposite route.
Yeah, and no one can tell. It's crazy how many people I would sneak up on, because if you really look at it, when you're patrolling a city street, how many people blind you and you have to hit them with your spots or your floods. You're like, what are you doing? Like, turn that off. But I would turn my stuff on. People would be flashing their lights at me and I'm like, no, dude, I'm patrolling. However, going back to what you said about CHP and your agency doing that, funny thing, something similar with my agency in regarding to vehicle codes and things like that, and who's going to be at fault if you get rear-ended or something like that, or car crashes into you. Going on a call, and this might make you laugh, going on a call, they were telling us, you need to find legal parking and park your police vehicle on a call, because if you say you double park next to some parked vehicles on a two-way, like on a 2-lane highway or 2-lane city street, not even a highway, 2-lane city street,
just 2-lane city street,
and someone rear ends you, we're at fault, and that's liability that we want to do. So you need to find parking. I'm like, so we were going to emergency, or maybe like a code 2 call, which is, it's an emergency situation, but it's not where it warrants, a code 3 response lights and sirens, but it's, hey, let's get there. There's something funny going on and you can't find parking. Now that person's sitting on their side waiting, like when do you do it? And a bunch of us were like, no, we're not doing that. We're going to just get park wherever. And then it came down to, okay, we see the issue, but if you're going to get lunch, find legal parking.
Well, nice. Yeah, I mean, that's a case of, cops being idiots and ruining it for everybody else. Like, come on, if you can find a place to back your car in, find a place to back your car in. Don't freaking double park just to go get a taco from Tito's,
Especially now with everybody has cameras. They want to take pictures of everything.
Yeah. Not one person was doing that, but you'd go to a call, right? And there would be an apartment complex. Say you're going into an apartment complex. So you park just a little bit off, because you don't need to park 2 houses away, because it's an apartment complex and they ain't going to see your ass coming anyways. So you park, and maybe it's a fire lane, but this is the only parking on the street, and at least you're near a curb. You would come out and people would be leaving nasty grams. You'd be filming you. Like, hey, this and that. You're like, we're on a call. Like, doesn't matter. It doesn't exempt you from parking. I'm like, I'm going to park here. I don't care.
Did you see the license plate? It said exempt. It literally says exempt.
And I would walk around and be like, look at that. California exempt. That means I can park here.
Did you, Glenn, did you guys have what we call the E plate? It was back in the day before it said California exempt. It had a E with an octagon around it, and then the license plate number. And, those. Yeah, those were the E plates. And the joke used to be, my dad told me, he said, back in the day, people go, what's the E stand for? And he goes, everyone but me.
We didn't have E plates. We didn't have those.
Your car's just registered normally, and
yeah, they had the sheriff's tag on it. That's all.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it might as well. It was kind of the same thing. It had a special plate that you could only get if you were a sheriff's car. And
right.
Yeah. As far as, go ahead, Chuck.
I was gonna say that's probably because they're doing, like in Florida and stuff, there's so many drugs that they're like, we're just gonna take this out, and use this car. Whereas in other agencies, they have to go through the full registration process, and a lot of these smaller agencies are like, nah, it's ours now. We'll just take the sticker. Good to go.
Yeah. You want to hear something funny? My undercover vehicle was a coal plate, right? So for us, it was when you could have one of two ways, right? The vehicle could be registered confidential and come back to the police department. But in my case, because we were, such a deep kind of undercover unit, all of our vehicles were cold plated. So they actually came back to fictional people. So if somebody ran it in law enforcement and there was a mole, which we actually did have a mole in our unit at one point, which was crazy. Yeah.
Nice.
So if somebody ran it, my truck was registered to a man named Harley Davidson. And had a fictional address. Yeah. But no, seriously, we and I don't know if I've ever told the story, but it's a much longer story. But ultimately, we had some information make it out of our office that we weren't sure how it had gotten out. It was very compartmentalized. Our unit was made up of detectives from several different police departments and police agencies. Our office was offsite. It was in an office building that housed, like, everybody always asked us, we always see these like scummy looking dudes coming and going from this office on the third floor that isn't listed on the marquee, and the door, doesn't have a number, and That's
major narcs.
Yeah. It was, our narcotics team. And nobody in the building knew what it was, but yet still somehow the information is getting out. Well, it turns out that one of the agencies, one of the police departments, not only provided a detective, it also provided support staff in the form of a records clerk who functioned as the administrative assistant for the task force commander. So she, filed our reports properly and kept, records properly and handled messages and all that kind of stuff. She was it. She was all we had. And she was great. And we all thought she was the bee's knees, and, brought her flowers on her birthday and cupcakes and cookies and all that kind of stuff. Turns out she had a secret meth habit. And we only found out one time because they yanked her out of the DA's office, showed up, yanked her off of her desk, searched her purse, found a meth pipe, dragged her out. They had already developed enough probable cause to drag her back to the station and basically say, "You're the leak, and you've been trading meth for info, and we want everybody that you're affiliated with." And that's how she went down. And it was I talk about, moments that are like eye-opening. We talked a little bit about, working narcotics and narcotics. Chuck, you said, you pointed your gun at a narcotics detective who was doing a surveillance, but they hadn't put it out over the radio.
Right.
Well, sometimes narcotics cops, to their detriment, but understandably so, are hesitant to put out that kind of stuff because they're afraid of the information getting out,
being burned. Sure. Yeah. Well, funny thing is something similar. My agency, and it honestly, the leaking of info happens so frequent in law enforcement that it's freaking crazy. And it's eye opening. You're like, what the fuck? Our narcotics unit, and another area's narcotics unit kept trying to do stings and raids on these locations, and they're like, fuck, we keep coming up empty. And it was starting to get to a point where, like, every time we develop a plan and we go to hit the locations, we keep coming up empty. Their shit's moved, they're gone, they're not there. And finally, like, dude, we have to have someone. So I don't know, something happened, and they ended up getting at least one person they knew that was frequent in the area, got into their phone, was able to search their phone, and found out that there was info coming from a number and giving them every time they were getting ready to hit multiple locations. Like, it came back to a fucking copper, and the copper, I mean, I never knew who this person was, but I don't know who the
you don't know specifics. You didn't know him, but you just
exactly. It's shit you hear of, and you're like, holy shit! Like, that dude's no longer, or that female is whoever it was. I don't know, male or female, is no longer with the department anymore. And then you start hearing more crazy shit, from the police officer underground. All these crazy things that happen everywhere. And you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
It's wild. It is.
I had the same issue. I had a guy on my shift. He was a retired New York cop. He came to work with our department, and we're doing a drug sting. And I'm down the street, and they go, okay, move in. They pull in, they stop the car, they get these two guys out. And when I roll up on the scene, I see one of my guys from my shift in handcuffs on the ground. And I go, what's this? Well, it turns out that this guy, this officer, was the personal driver for the biggest cocaine dealer in the city.
Man.
And he looked at me, Sarge, I didn't do anything. I said, what are you in handcuffs for then?
Right.
So he was driving this guy around doing drug deals in the city.
Oh, shit.
And I go, what the hell, man? Come on. A retired New York cop. And now you're doing this. Now you're going to go to jail, right?
Well, there was your first thing. He's from New York, and NYPD back in that era was not known for its reputation for, I mean, what's New York's finest taxi service, Serpico, all those, like that era was not great in the NYPD history. They've done a lot of cleaning up in the last 30 years, but there was a time where New York PD was not the agency of, that's why you look at the era of Adam 12, and you look at LAPD coppers, high and tights, big shoulders, right, clean uniforms, belts with keepers, shine shoes, going to inspection. You look at New York cops from that same era, it's baggy shirts, belts that are hanging sideways, leather gear that they've inherited from 5 other cops with the polished gold chain, they're going on patrol in Mackinac jackets, wearing flannel shirts under their pea coats, You know
what a lot of that was attributed to? Lack of pay.
Well, I'm sure it wouldn't surprise me.
A lot of money. They still don't make a lot of money.
No, and they don't. And then you got a 40,000 officer strong department, and you're only paying your guys like 30, 40 grand a year.
Right.
They have to have other jobs. I've talked to so many NYPD and NYFD guys that they have to have a second job just so that they can get by and feed their family. And I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah. Anybody that works this job and is for your department's doing it wrong. I mean, unless you're like a volunteer police department, if you're a professional police department, you need to make sure, because otherwise you're just inviting corruption. You are. If your cops have to do something else to pay the bills, they're serving 2 masters, and that's just inviting corruption. So
listen, in the sheriff's office now, with just a high school diploma, you can easily make $100,000 a year.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you're sane and can pass a background check.
Jobs and
or relatively sane. Well, Glenn, where can people get your book? And it's called.
All of them are on Barnes and Noble online, or Amazon, or Kindle and Nook if you want to have a read book, and also from the publishers exlibris.com.
Okay.
And what are the names of all of them?
Okay, the first one was The Hurt.
Uh-huh.
And then the next one was the sequel to that one called The Hurt, the real story behind The Hurt and the rise and fall of extremists. The other one is called Look a Quarter. It's autobiographical anecdotes of my crazy life from living in New York through the military, through the policing to now. And then another one is a political thriller called Operation 1600, about a corrupt U.S. president that gets us into a nuclear war with Russia.
Oh, shit.
Is his name Brandon? All right. Well, you guys should definitely check those out. Chuck, you have our dedication this week?
I do. Pop it up real quick. Wi-Fi is slow.
Yeah, right.
All right. So this week's dedication goes out to Bradley Stephen Henry Johnson. Deputy Sheriff Brad Johnson succumbed to a gunshot wound sustained the previous day at about 5 p.m. when he and another deputy were shot by an auto theft suspect near the intersection of Alabama 25 and Bulldog Bend Road. Deputies pursued the stolen vehicle until it stopped, and the man opened fire, striking Deputy Johnson and the second deputy. The man then fled on foot and remained at large until being taken into custody approximately 16 hours later. Deputy Johnson remained on life support until his organs could be donated. Deputy Johnson had served with the Bibb County Sheriff's Office for 8 years. He is survived by his fiancée and 2 children and his parents. He was 32 years old. He had an 8-year tour, and the incident date was Wednesday, June 29th, 2022.
I mean, too many. It's
So
become
many.
okay to go open season on cops these days. Did you see the latest with the 4-year-old? It was 2 cops arresting the dad in a traffic stop, and the 4-year-old pulls a gun and shoots at him.
Right. Yeah.
Doesn't hit him, hits the building, but took a pot shot at him. 4-year-old pot shot at cops because they were arresting his dad.
I wonder where he learned that from.
You're right. That's the world we're living in. So
they should put a second charge onto that guy. Child endangerment, attempt murder, because he's teaching his child this. Because no 4-year-old should ever feel the need to pick up a firearm.
Take his kid away from him. Take his kid away from him.
Hopefully they will.
What a shithead.
Well, with regards to Deputy Rest Easy, brother, we've got it from here. Glenn, thank you once again. It's a pleasure talking to you. It's fun to talk about. It's like I said, different eras of police work are my dad's era, your era, my era, Chuck's. They're all similar in our experiences, but they're also different in how we dealt with it. My dad's era, similar to yours. If somebody said something about your wife or your kids, you could, drag him by the short and curlies into a dark alley and threaten his life. Nowadays,
you can't do that anymore.
Well, nowadays you have to assume that if you do it, it's all caught on camera.
Yeah, of course.
So, my era of policing, they told you to assume that it was all being caught on camera. In this day and age, it is all caught on. I mean,
all of it.
Oh, yeah.
Everything. People whip out their phones and there's 17 different angles, not to mention the fact that they gave cops body cams to film it all.
Yep.
And
that too.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of cases, thank God they did, because they're just, exonerating the hell out of us in many cases. So
crazy.
In some cases, but
So
we
we appreciate you coming on, Glenn. Chuck, why don't you close us out? Yeah.
Well, thank you all for listening today. If you like today's podcast, please go follow us on our Instagram at @war_stories _official, and our Facebook at War Stories Podcast. If you already follow us and share our posts and our info, you can also go to the link in our bio on Instagram and Facebook to reach all of our socials, our media, and our website. Our podcast is on all major streaming podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube. If you want to support us, please go to our website at www.warstoriesofficial.com. Grab some gear. We still have some Whoopie hoodies, some shirts, patches, and stickers left. And we're going to be having some tank tops. That's in the work, getting that finalized, and some hats. We're doing, if you want to be featured on our show and you think you have a story or want to share your story, please go to booking.warstories@gmail.com. I saw that some of you guys have been putting your stuff onto the War Stories official website, but please remember, booking.warstories@gmail.com is where you want to send your info to be featured on the show. If you have already sent a message on the website, please go back, copy and paste it, and just booking.warstories@gmail.com. Send me your story and I can get you booked. We are looking for law enforcement, corrections, dispatchers, fire, medics, and veterans. If you have a friend who you think would be a great fit, let them know about us and give them our booking email. If you've already been on the show and you want to come back and you're waiting for me to give you a ring, I'm going through them, but just send me a follow-up email. Hey, I came on. I would like to come on again, and send me what story you want to share, and we'll get you booked on there. Again, thank you for the support, and stay safe.
Yep. And thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Glenn. And until our next episode, come home with your shield or on it.